So you might have noticed that Marvel Studios is kind of cooked these days. And we've seen this happening over the past couple of years with declining box office returns and lower viewership numbers on a lot of their new shows. Yet, as it stands right now, at this moment in 2025, they are at somewhat of a low point. The first two movies this year are losing money in the box office, and their big hit Daredevil show cannot even chart on Nielsen after 9 whole episodes.
I'm so scared right now.
And the good news is Marvel Studios is aware of the issues and they have a plan to fix it. But there's a problem with Marvel's plan. And in this video, I want to focus on one simple change that I think would actually fix all of Marvel Studios' problems. And unfortunately, I think this is so important that I'll take it as far as saying that if Marvel does not do what I'm going to talk about in this video, nothing they do will actually work. They will not fix the problem and they will continue to be cooked. I've been thinking a lot about this. I've got a lot to say. Let's get into it. Now, first off, let's take a second here and fully acknowledge how low this low point is. The first two Marvel movies this year are both bombing in the box office right now, and that includes Thunderbolts, which might even make less money than Captain America Brave New World. And Brave New World sucks, and it's really weird. It's goobly glob. However, the problem with Thunderbolts is that it's actually incredible. This thing has one of the highest Rotten Tomatoes scores in the entire MCU catalog, and it also has one of the strongest audience scores ever. People loved this freaking movie, and Marvel Studios went absolutely insane with the marketing for this film. You had a fan screening around the country 2 weeks before the movie came out, and a bunch of spoilers came out, including crazy post-credit scene leaks. You had the review embargo lift an entire week before the movie came out. You had Marvel Studios literally change the name of the movie to The New Avengers and then do a bunch of marketing gimmicks around the country to get people to realize that this movie is actually an Avengers movie. You had Bob Iger talking about how Thunderbolts represented a turnaround for Marvel Studios at an investor call going into its weekend 2 box office. And there was this big article that broke in the Wall Street Journal explaining that Kevin Feige considered Thunderbolts to be the first movie in the new turnaround for Marvel Studios. That's like Marvel and Disney firing every single thing they have trying to make Thunderbolts a successful film, and it is the second lowest grossing movie in the entire MCU, only behind The Marvels, which just came out a couple of years ago. And on top of that, I think the Daredevil thing's just as embarrassing, maybe even more embarrassing, because Daredevil's a big name, Charlie Cox is a big star, people love Daredevil, and those Netflix shows were very successful. And yet this new Daredevil show had such low ratings that it didn't even hit the numbers that the Star Wars Acolyte show hit last year, and that show got canceled. During the week of the finale for Daredevil Born Again, a show on Paramount Plus hit number 10 on the original charts on Nielsen, and that show's Mobland, and it's absolutely fantastic. Like, it's a great show. You should check it out. But guys, there's no universe where Mobland with 4 episodes on Paramount goddamn Plus should be getting more viewership than Daredevil with 9 episodes on Disney Plus, which has like almost 200 million subscribers. Like, what is happening here? Okay, so it's really bad right now. Now you fully understand how bad it is. And again, Marvel understands this too, and they've already pivoted. They're making huge moves for the next 2 Avengers movies. They paid RDJ $100+ million to come back for a couple of films, and it appears that all of the OG Avengers are also coming back for these movies, and they're probably getting big paychecks too. A lot of the OG Avengers are playing multiple roles. There's X-Men versus Avengers, there's Doctor Frickin' Doom, there's Secret Wars and Battle World, and possibly variants that we'll never see again on screen. So yeah, they're pulling out all the stops, and I think these 2 Avengers movies are going to get a lot of attention. They're going to get a lot of hype. However, that's only a temporary fix. I mean, Marvel doesn't just want the next 2 Avengers movies to be successful. They want multiple Marvel movies a year to be successful for like the next 10 years. That's basically what they had during their first 10 years leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. And now that you know what's going on, how bad it is, and the fact that Doomsday is kind of a temporary fix, let's talk about what Marvel Studios thinks they're going to do with the Mutant Saga. From everything I have researched, and this comes from various sources, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios kind of think 2 things will get them out of the current situation that they are in. The first thing is quality, and Kevin has spoken at great length about how quality filmmaking, quality character studies, and great stories are the antidote for almost any problem you're having. Marvel Studios did not have marquee characters when it first launched its cinematic universe. This is because in the 90s, when Marvel Entertainment was going bankrupt, they sold a lot of the licenses for actual popular characters like Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and X-Men to other studios. So when Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios was being created, they were able to grab 10 different characters up from licenses that were really cheap. This included Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, etc. And so when you start with non-marquee characters and you just make good superhero movies to the point that you gross $23 billion in 10 years and create some of the biggest movies ever seen in the history of Hollywood, you're probably going to walk away from that thinking that you could make any character popular. And more importantly, you will think that the character's popularity is not as important as the quality of the movie, the quality of the actor portraying the character, and just the story overall. So that's the first thing that Marvel Studios is looking to change. Now, they have spoken about how they're going to change this. So number one, they're really not going to put a lot of focus on Disney Plus shows anymore. The way it's been described is that Disney Plus shows will not push the overall MCU story forward, and instead will be offshoot stories that technically take place within the MCU, but are not the place that the MCU story will be pushed forward. They are truly going to become ancillary stories that are technically connected to this wider universe. And on top of that, Marvel Studios is going to double down on using their movies to tell that big macro story, getting back to the way it was during the Infinity Saga. And another way they're going to double down on quality is Kevin Feige is going to be much more involved with each individual movie, which was something that he got away from during phases 4 and 5 because there was just too much going on. He was spread way too thin. And the second part of the solution here for Marvel Studios has to do with a clear narrative. Now, a lot of the same tools will be used to ultimately set this up, but Kevin and Bob Iger have talked about how the Disney Plus programs and just the overall frequency of Marvel content made it so the story was hard for people to follow, and a lot of these projects ended up feeling like homework. And so by reducing the output, by not having the main story take place in the Disney Plus shows, and by Kevin really just focusing on each individual film, they're going to be higher quality, but also the overall story should be much more clear and easy to follow. Marvel still wants an overall story, and I think they view a cinematic universe and what they did with the Infinity Saga as sort of proof that that is the best way to continue to build an audience that remains loyal and keeps coming back to the theaters. So in the face of all the problems that are happening and like all the numbers falling apart, Marvel believes that quality and a much more clear overall story for the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the 1-2 punch that can get them out of this shitty, horrible, it's over, Jover, whatever situation. And while I think those are all good things, and I do think Marvel's on the right track, there's another thing that's really important that I am afraid they are missing. And in order to get to the point that I'm trying to make here, I want to offer up another interesting tidbit when it comes to Marvel Studios. I wonder if you will agree with this. I have seen a lot of other fans and insiders begin speaking to the fact that all of the fan theories and the fake leaks for Marvel Studios seem to be way more interesting and compelling than what the studio actually does. What I'm saying is, when we hear a random rumor about a certain character or a certain setting being in a Marvel movie, it seems like the way the fan base takes that, or the way the leakers and, fake leakers take that, is to dial it up, make it incredibly fan servicey, and honestly, it usually ends up sounding really cool. However, what Marvel actually ends up doing with this stuff doesn't seem anywhere near as cool. And I'll give you a couple examples here. Check this out. I think Multiverse of Madness is probably the best example of this, as a lot of the leaks and rumors about the Illuminati, the different members, and what was going to happen with those characters was mind-blowing. Like, dude, there were so many cool things we heard about, and then the actual movie, it ends up being one scene, they're barely in it, Wanda basically wipes them all out, and then it's over. I even think Shang-Chi had cooler rumors than the movie ended up being, and I like the Shang-Chi movie. I think it's fun, but dude, do you remember the rumors? There were rumors that you were gonna have this crazy tournament with literally X-Men, like friggin' Spiral. Omega Red was rumored. Like, dude, there were some crazy rumors of just all kinds of fun Marvel characters and Shang-Chi entering a tournament with all of these crazy characters to try to save the world. And again, I like the Shang-Chi movie, but those leaks seemed so damn cool. What about the leaks for Love and Thunder? Remember when people thought Noel was going to show up? The all-black Necrosaur was going to mean something and connect to Hela? And remember when we thought Gore was actually going to kill gods in that movie and it was going to be absolutely epic and awesome? And this keeps happening. I mean, look at Brave New World. Dude, there were so many wild rumors about Red Hulk doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and he's barely in the movie. Look at the Thunderbolts movie. There were all sorts of rumors about what Sentry would be doing. I remember hearing Sentry was going to rip people apart, violently kill most of the team. And although I like the Thunderbolts movie, like I really like it, Sentry basically doesn't do shit. There were more crazy rumors about Spider-Man No Way Home than ones we ended up getting. And on and on and on. It almost feels like every Marvel movie has a better, more exciting version of it that is created by the fans and a bunch of fake leaks. Now, I want to shift the conversation here and talk about an interview from 2022 that the Russo brothers gave when they were talking about Netflix, Marvel, and the changing industry. Here's something really interesting that Joe said in that interview that I couldn't get out of my mind. He says, but I also think too that Disney's gone very conservative. Post Bob Iger, they seem to be in IP management mode. You're going to get all the Star Wars and all the Marvel you can handle for the next decade. Now, that quote probably seems a little crazy, but I want to give you some context here because this was at a time when the Russos were kind of beefing with Marvel, and part of this had to do with the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit. But remember that the Russos were meeting with Marvel Studios. They were going to do Secret Wars. Then, after the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit, things seemed to fall apart on that end. And for the longest time, it seemed like Marvel and Kevin Feige would not work with the Russos anymore. And this was also at a time when Bob Iger had retired and Chapek had come in. And we did hear some really weird stories around that time where Chapek would make Kevin make the movies under 2 hours long and try to trim them down for simple box office number boosting. And it's possible that some of this happened with the shows and stuff as well. And it might seem like a bit of an oxymoron, the fact that they would want to conserve their franchise and preserve it, but they were also going to make as much content as people could handle. But I think all of this stuff is actually connected because I think when you think of conservative actions, when you think of a company managing IP, that means they actually don't want to take any risks. They don't want to do anything too crazy, and they want to shift from breaking ground to preserving ground. And I think the constant influx of content was a part of a conservative franchise idea. Like, I think they really thought in the age of streaming, in order to conserve the spot that Marvel had attained within the pop culture zeitgeist, they were going to need to make as much content as humanly possible. And yet that content was also not to be too crazy or too ambitious or too wild to affect the rest of the brand. Everything had to be kept at a pretty even keel. And I think that actually leads to the exact problem that I'm talking about right here, because there were all sorts of concepts and rumors from these different Marvel projects that we know were ripped out of these projects for different reasons. Like Doctor Strange was originally going to be in WandaVision. There were even rumors that an old man Steve Rogers was going to show up in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Tom Cruise Iron Man was supposed to be in Multiverse of Madness. There were even rumors that Hydra Captain America was going to pop up in Multiverse of Madness. And yet all of this stuff seems to be removed. And I think part of the principle here was don't give too much too fast. And Marvel wanted to sort of piecemeal or drip feed out the content because, again, they were actually in IP or franchise protection mode. They were trying to manage. Ultimately, I think this comes down to teasing and then promising more in the future. I think Multiverse of Madness teases some crazy stuff, but ultimately promises more crazy stuff in the future. I think Love and Thunder does the same thing. I think Brave New World did the same thing. And I think this ultimately ties back to the fan theory thing. Like, why do the fan theories or the fake leaks so much more cooler than what Marvel is doing? It's because the fans are thinking of the craziest, most fun, most ambitious, most fan servicey things possible. And Disney and Marvel Studios is literally in the complete opposite direction. They're trying to conserve. They're trying to piecemeal stuff out so that Marvel has strength for the future. I know for a fact that Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige have a big whiteboard at the studio where they keep really important ideas for things they want to do that they know will blow fans' mind. There are things like Loki and Thor's reunion, World War Hulk, and RDJ as Doctor Doom that are on that whiteboard. And in fact, I think the RDJ Doctor Doom thing is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Do you know the original plan for RDJ as Doctor Doom? Well, I'll tell you. RDJ was going to come back as Doctor Doom, and in the original version of Secret Wars, he was going to be set up as one of the things that He Who Remains removed from the timeline, and so then Doom would be sort of justified in showing back up and being really angry, and then they would tease that Doom was actually a big problem and maybe He Who Remains was right about him. And then in the Mutant Saga, Doom was going to be the main villain of that entire saga as he sort of showed up in the timeline and became the very thing that He Who Remains was afraid of. But then Jonathan Majors got in trouble and the Marvel fandom wasn't really feeling Kang anyways, so they completely changed that, and instead of piecemealing it out, instead of drip drying that in Secret Wars, now RDJ Doctor Doom is the main villain of Secret Wars. So this is like the opposite of what they were going to do. And look, I wish this was more properly set up as well. It doesn't actually feel that organic or satisfying, but the point is we're about to get something absolutely insane with RDJ as Doctor Doom. Like, there's no way around it. That is simply crazy. And in Marvel's original version, they were going to tease that out, promise more in the future. It's the same program. It's the same thing that they always do. And so what I am saying to you right now is this is the one simple change that could actually fix Marvel Studios. They need to stop being conservative. They need to stop piecemealing these fun fan servicey things out. They need to stop drip feeding us with all the goodness that they know they could put into every single movie, and instead every single Marvel movie from here on out needs to swing for the absolute fences. I'm talking about total fan service, as many cameos as possible, swing for the fences, bring in insane fun characters from the comics, go for it every single time. And part of the reason I believe this is because they fatigued us with all of those projects that were basically super mid for so long that even high quality stuff like Thunderbolts is not enough to get people to the theaters. And Marvel has, within the last year, two perfect examples that explain this point. You have Thunderbolts, which is such a good movie. It is tight, man. It is sharp. It is well acted. It has heart. It feels like it has a purpose. There's meta aspects to it. It is so good. And then you have Deadpool and Wolverine, which is basically cameo slot pulled together with a few heartfelt scenes done by Hugh Jackman. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you like Deadpool and Wolverine, but that's what it is. That plot is paper thin, dude. It is nowhere near the quality movie or narrative that Thunderbolts is. But Deadpool and Wolverine is about to literally make $1 billion more than Thunderbolts. Get the out of here, Marvel and Disney. You think you can do this shit? Look at what Thunderbolts is making. Look what Deadpool and Wolverine is making. So time's up. You can't do it anymore. You got to go spectacle. You got to go big. That's just where the audience is. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that Marvel should abandon a shared story. And I do understand that if you're thinking in terms of one big shared story, you obviously want some really big, cool stuff to happen towards the end of that story to feel like there's a payoff, to feel like there's a buildup. But I promise you, Marvel needs to figure out a way to deliver spectacle, swing for the fences every single time, and yet also still build up to something crazy. They need incredibly hyped, crazy spectacle ideas for the end of this saga, but they need the same thing for every single entry. They cannot just make small little dramatic movies anymore. They gotta go big. And interestingly enough, I just went over a story recently over on the streaming channel that explains that Kevin Feige and Bob Iger actually have a difference of opinion on what to do with the upcoming X-Men films. And it seems like Feige is still in the mindset that a dramatic and serious, smaller X-Men movie or series of those movies can successfully rehabilitate the Marvel brand, while Bob Iger thinks you need bigger event films each and every time. And I'm kind of on Bob Iger's side on this one, man. So I'm going to tell you, I think that's the one simple change that could actually fix Marvel, because here's the reality. Marvel was never high art. I know there are some damn good movies within this catalog, but you didn't get to $23 billion in 10 years because you were making high art. You were making spectacle. You were making the amusement park of cinema, and it was awesome. That's why we all loved it. So you can't get away with this conservative flooding of inconsequential projects that don't rock the boat. That's not going to work anymore. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. This is like the topic of our time, man. So let me know your thoughts. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video.